Hey everyone, Kate Payne here from Standing Out Online, and I am excited to be live with you today on my Coffee with Kate show with my very special guest and good friend, Markey Read.
Hey,
Hello, Markey.
everybody.
Thanks
Hey,
for being here
cheers.
to have coffee with me. Actually, it's water. Can't do coffee in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
So, thanks everybody for tuning in. We are thrilled to have Markey on board today. We're going to be talking about Markey knows a lot of things about business and entrepreneurship, but we're going to be focusing on pricing. So, pricing with confidence. Stop trading time for money is the title of today's episode. So, remember, you're listening to Coffee with Kate, brewing business brilliance for entrepreneurs. And I usually have a show once a month. I'm getting more and more people wanting to get on my show, so I might be going to 2 episodes a month, which will be kind of fun. And I always like to do live because whoever's tuning in can ask questions and you can get them answered in real time while we're live with Markey right here. But what's really cool is as soon as this is done, the replay goes out to the 3 platforms that I am broadcasting to right now. So it goes to my personal Facebook page, my YouTube channel, and my LinkedIn personal profile for Kate Payne. So the replay will be out there automatically. And even if you see this in a day or 2 weeks away, you can watch it and ask questions as long as you tag me or Markey, and you can get questions even if it's 2 weeks from now. I mean, answers to your questions, even 2 weeks from now. So the way I met Markey, so Markey is from Vermont, which is where I'm from originally. And I met Markey, I think it was like 2010, Markey, when I became the executive director in Vermont of the Women Business Owners Network. And at the time, we had 9 chapters in the state. We actually even had one in New Hampshire. And Markey was a chapter coordinator at one of the chapters in Vermont. And I had so much respect for Markey, and Markey kind of took me under her wing and really helped mentor me through mentorship and friendship into helping me be a more dynamic executive director. And what was really cool is a colleague of ours at the time, Amy Schollenberger, actually brought you and me and Amy together to go speak in Tampa, Florida, at the National Organization for Women's Conference. And we did a 3-person panel. And I was
wild. Yeah. Yeah. It was wild. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was so fun. So anyway, but Markey has been and you've been in business with your own business since 1992?
Yeah,
That right?
that's about right.
Yeah. Okay. So Markey has dedicated her career to empowering solopreneurs to create thriving businesses and fulfilling lives. Since 1992, she has guided entrepreneurs through the challenges of building a business, helping them harness their superpowers while embracing their bozo powers, the quirks that make them unique, to develop authentic and successful ventures. She's also a dynamic speaker and a coach. She does a lot of, you do stuff. Do you still doing your Myers-Briggs stuff?
Oh, yeah. I do quite a bit of type training. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to talk about pricing today. So I had been trying to get Markey into eWomen Network for a while, and she finally joined the crew a couple years back. And I think that this is a perfect topic for so many people who are entrepreneurs, whether they're starting up or they are well seasoned, and everybody always is questioning things about pricing. And I think sometimes we also have to pivot given whatever the climate is going on in our business world too. So let's start out with, I wanted to talk about, like, we hear a lot about trading time for dollars. And I would like you to speak to that. You don't have to give a short answer. We've got plenty of time here today, but really talk about what that means and how how people should be thinking about that.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, if you are a service provider and you're the primary service provider of your business, there's always an element of trading time for money. So just there's a little bit of a myth out there that somehow you're going to magically not trade time for money, which is misleading. And I think it frustrates a lot of entrepreneurs. But what that really speaks to is How do you create other opportunities for people to engage with you that aren't just about the one-to-one coaching or one-to-one service, direct service that you provide? So it's either doing groups or adding in some low-cost evergreen kind of products, like maybe you have a book or you have some videos or some other remote learning kinds of opportunities. It could also be in-person workshops. It could also be that you train other people to do what you do, and you start to be able to really scale and deliver the genius that you bring to your clients out there at a bigger level. So it's the main thing there is to get away from the one-to-one coaching or one-to-one service providing, so that you're able to grow beyond your physical capacity for hours in the day.
Okay. So I think also sometimes people hear that phrase and they think, what's my hourly rate? Like I still get
Yeah.
asked all these years later, people will be like, what's it like to work with you? What do you charge on an hourly rate? And I'm like, I haven't charged an hourly rate in a decade.
Yeah.
So when people ask you that question about whether or not they should, like I have packages or programs, some people still charge an hourly rate. Speak to the hourly rate piece.
Sure. You don't ever have so when somebody says, "What's your hourly rate?" what they're really asking for is, "What am I getting into? Like,
Yeah,
what's
right.
kind of investment am I going to make?"
Exactly.
And so I encourage every entrepreneur who's a service provider to have an hourly rate, even if you never actually meet with anybody by the hour. And there's several reasons. One is you might have somebody who really just wants to meet with you, who just meet with you for an hour because, like you and I have done that, Kate. I say, I really just need to like pick your brain, and I respect you, and I want to value your time. So I'd like to pay you for an hour of your time because I have some very specific questions that I want your help with. Or it becomes the building block for all of your services. So even though you might have a package or a program or all these other dynamic ways that you put together what you offer, if you know your hourly rate, then you can build out new services and new programs very quickly. And that's sort of like, I don't mean like, oh, my hourly rate is what I think I should be paid per hour. No, what does it cost you per hour to deliver the genius, the amazing qualities, the amazing self that you are to your clients?
Right.
What does it cost you? So what does it mean for you to prep for that? What does it mean for you to deliver it? What does it mean for you to have the supplies and other things that you need to have available? What's the follow-up? So you might have, for example, you might do a 3-hour workshop. Well, the 3 hours isn't the only time that you want to be reimbursed for in that time. You
Right.
want to be able to include all the prep, the afterwards, all the other dynamics that went into your ability to spend 3 hours with people in a workshop.
Mhm.
So it's a building block for me. So now an hourly rate is just a building block, and it's a way for you to very quickly look at what your cost of services sold. We think about in products or cost of goods sold, and people instinctively understand what that means because there's a bunch of components to a product, and you understand what the raw materials were, and then you add up your pricing. What cost of services sold is much more complex because it's our time. And
Mhm.
whenever I hear a service provider say, "Oh, it's just my time," I'm like, "No, no, it is your time. That's
It
the whole
is
point.
your
It's
time. It's not
actually your
just your time, it
time. It's
is your
not
time.
just your time."
Right.
And so when we really understand how to value the time that it takes for us to deliver the amazing whatever it is that we do, our superpowers, then we can have that as a building block. So that's
Mhm.
that's really the main point of that.
Okay. So let's kind of go backwards a little bit. I wanted to kick us off into that because that's really what we're going to be focusing on today. But it's also about you know, when we talk about your worth or your value and how you're pricing your programs or your hourly rate or whatever it is for you. Let's talk about how to increase your income without working more hours.
Mm,
This is my favorite thing. And it's like something I'd always before I started off the third iteration of my own business in 2014 with standing out online when I used to be Kate Pan Associates and I was focusing on PR. And then of course when I discovered eWomen Network and I started meeting other women and stuff, and networking more in a way that was different than small town Vermont, right? It opened the door that I could actually charge more and not
yeah,
have to work more. Like,
yeah,
it kind of goes along with like the higher fee programs for the one-on-one. I'd rather go narrow and deep one-to-one with somebody for more money in a longer period of time rather than trying to do all these little things here and there and being so busy
Right.
that I'm stressed, and
Right.
scattered.
So the fastest way to make more money without working harder is to simply raise your rates,
Yeah.
and that gets back to that, understanding what the value of what you're bringing, both from the cost of your services sold, and all those sort of bits that we're talking about. But the other thing is that you need to bring in the value of the transformation that your clients experience, the value of your experience that you bring to the party. I've been on the planet for a while, and so have you. And my favorite phrase this year is, "I know stuff. I know a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I know stuff." And I didn't know that 10 years ago. I didn't know what I know now 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, and certainly not when I started. I mean, I started in business. I was very young. I joined this business in when I was 26.
Wow.
And of course, I thought I had it all, figured out, of course, the hubris of youth. And I
Yes.
was smart. I was smart and I had good instincts, but I didn't have wisdom. And that's a piece that a lot of us, I think, leave out when we bring into our pricing conversation or our value conversation.
Right. I completely agree. So, if somebody is listening to this right now, and let's say they've been in business for a year, maybe a little bit more than that, and they hear about that they can charge more, but they have a feeling, I get asked this all the time when people ask me for some mentorship. Well, I want to do this and I think it's worth it, but who am I? Who am I to charge
Right.
that amount of money? Don't I need to be in business longer? So when you work with somebody, how do you sort of start with them? I mean, do you take a look, like somebody might come to you who's been in business for 15, 20 years and they want to do a pivot and start there. So kind of give me a sense, or give our listeners a sense of where you kind of start with people to determine that.
Sure. So, many folks are starting business after having done whatever it is their talents are in a professional position. So, in a position where they were paid by a company. So, even though you've only been in business for a year, it doesn't mean that you don't have all the experience and wisdom you gained during all of those years of doing your work. So, if you worked in public relations in a corporation for 10 or 15 years and then you decided to have your own PR agency, well, you don't just have 1 year of experience, you have 16 years at least. And I think that there's something important to remember about 15 years is when you've been doing your whatever it is you're doing for 15 years, you get to, I think you automatically get to carry a card called "I'm an expert," because
I would agree.
there's a 15-year kind of mark of like, it's sort of the idea of it's sort of loosely based on that 10,000 hours, which is a bit of a myth. But what it means is that for 15 years, 15 times around the sun, that you've gone around the sun a few times, that you've gained the experience, the wisdom, the perspective of your area of expertise. And then you can bring that to your clients. Now, you might have had a whole staff behind you when you were working in that corporate position, but it doesn't mean you don't still have the wisdom of problem solving and rising to the occasion in moment to moment kind of situations that you'll bring to your clients.
Right, right. So if somebody comes to you, where do you start with them? Like, what are some of the kinds of questions that you ask somebody to sort of get a feel for where they're at and then what they want to do?
Yeah. So when it comes to coaching entrepreneurs, one of the first questions that people ask me is, "What do I charge?" Really, that starts with that, and
Yep.
immediately that gets into, well, what exactly are you offering, and then who are you selling that to, and
Right.
all of those components come in very quickly, because truthfully, pricing touches everything in a business. Pricing touches everything in your business. With the more clear and more expert you become at pricing, the more likely it is that your business overall will run more smoothly. And so I start with pricing because it's one of the questions that people ask me right away.
Mhm.
And particularly folks who've been in a corporate position and now are going to go into some kind of consulting or coaching business on their own. They're like, I don't even know what to charge.
Right.
So that's a big foundational piece. And then, from there, I really want to know who your people are. Like who are you talking to? Who is it that you think is going to hire you to impart your genius and your expertise onto whatever else they're doing.
Right. I still get that asked too. When I asked, when I, like, if I'm having a prospective client call and I'll be like, well, who do you serve?
Right.
Everybody. No, you
Right.
don't. You
Wrong
can't.
wrong answer,
Right.
right.
Wrong answer. And I, with respect, you've got a right fit audience. You've got an ideal client, and you've got to, you really almost, it's reverse engineering, right? Like figure out what is it, what is their pain point? What is it they need? How am I the expert to solve their problem? And then kind of go from there, right?
Right. And I think another piece in that is what's your niche. So, I work with folks who say, well, you meet people and then not only they say my clients or anybody, my prospective clients or anybody and everybody, they'll also list an entire laundry list of, 17 different things they can do. Well, yeah, I can do a lot more than talk about pricing, and you can do a lot more than talk about LinkedIn, right? I mean, like there's a
Absolutely.
lot more to who you are. It's just the entry point. And when we're beginning, I think people are really afraid to identify what their entry point is. If they understand that what the entry point is, it go once you're inside that sphere of your genius, then that leads you to everything else that you do. And
Mhm.
I'll say it took me a long time to be willing to niche down to pricing to that pricing was really the place for entry point, but it's just the place I start. It's the only not the only thing I do. In
Right.
fact, if it was the only thing I do, it would be, wouldn't it would be short-lived because there's so much more complexity to a business than just pricing.
So you just made me think of something, especially with you and I being in the world of women's entrepreneurship. I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't work with men, but
Mhm.
in our women's networking, entrepreneurial world and everything, do you think women have a harder time or a more challenging time figuring out what to charge for themselves? And I,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
that
So
goes to probably to confidence, right?
right. So I had this conversation with men and women, and men usually start higher already. They're already starting higher with their rates, and then they get it and they run. And they're like, "Yeah, I got it." Now there's complexity and there's nuance to it. They can always become better at what they're doing.
Yep.
But women actually fight with me about raising their rates. Like they defend their right to charge less. And I just wonder, like, what are you arguing for here? Like, what is it you're trying to accomplish here by doing that? And every time I suggest to someone that they could raise their rates by, let's say, 50% from where they are right now, just by talking to them, I
Mhm.
can tell right away they can just raise their rates 50%. Their brains go nuts. They just start to fry. I can see it. Their brains start to fry and sizzle inside their heads. And um, then what I say is, okay, if you can't do 50%, start with a 25% increase. And what you're going to find is you just is it'll be a stretch. You might be uncomfortable, and that's okay. That's okay. You can be uncomfortable. It's fine. But I don't want you to be so terrified. So I believe you should raise your rates to the level where it's a little uncomfortable, but you're not terrified by it. Like,
Terrified, right, exactly.
you're like, okay, yeah, my
Like,
rates are, and you say that with confidence, but you're not like, oh, you're like freaking out by it. And so, um, so what happens is that they raise their rates 25%. All of a sudden, there'll be some point, and it just happened with a client. She said she was on the phone with a new prospect, and she heard herself quote the rates that we had talked about in the very beginning, the 50% increase. And the very next thing out of that prospective client's mouth was, "Great, when can we start?" And what happened is that she got it down in her body. It was no longer, Markey told me to do this,
Right.
or an intellectual exercise, or a spreadsheet where she figured it was no longer in her head. It was down in her heart. And she knew that she was worth that.
Right. Right.
And now when she tells people, she just says it and she doesn't even think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so great. So we have a fellow eWomen member here. Gail Stevens is
Great.
on. Hello, Gail.
Hi,
Thanks for joining
Gail.
us. And she just said this is so great. So she says thank you. Love having you on for this. So I think this is a good segue, what you just said, to talk about what you call empowered pricing. So I looked at some of your items on your website and your opt-ins and things like that. So kind of segue from what we just talked about into this empowered pricing, um, and what you mean with that.
So empowered pricing
Oh,
to
and
me
Paula's
is
on. Our
having,
friend
hi
Paula's on.
Paula. Empowered pricing to me is that that ability to speak from the position of power. So I had a coach who used to use the phrase "stand tall in your prices," and I didn't really appreciate the nuance of that when she was saying it to me because I was not standing tall in my prices at the time. But standing tall or standing firm, down into your body. And so empowered pricing means that I understand that what I do is powerful. My clients come to me because they want a powerful experience. I know how to support them to be empowered in their own agency. So it's knowing that you have agency. One of the things I love about entrepreneurs is that entrepreneurs have agency in a way that almost nobody else does.
Yes.
And even an executive doesn't have the same kind of agency that an entrepreneur has. And so knowing that and claiming it, really embodying it. So empowered for me is also embodied, in
Mhm.
fully embodied, like it's in your veins, it's in your bones, it's in your heart, it's in your gut. You know it all through your body. And when you speak it, people just say, "Oh yeah, how can I participate?"
Right. Like, let's have it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like, let's just do it.
Let's
And
just get going.
they're not in the calculation of, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost me? They're in, how can I get some of this?
Right, right. So let's kind of pivot just a little bit. So one of the things that because I've been dealing with this. I mean, we all even though I've been in business a long time and all of our businesses go through iterations. We go through different economic climates, all of the things, right? And so sometimes we have to switch things up or we have to refresh our programs. We can't just like have our programs, have our services, put the price and never think about refreshing it, changing it, or modifying it, right? Was that a
Right,
fair
right,
statement?
right.
Okay.
In fact, I think
So
every year you should be reviewing your pricing.
right. So given sometimes, let's just say in the economic climate right now where inflation is high and things like that. So if you've been doing a service for a period of time and it's a high fee program, right? So let's say it's a $19,000 program for 6 months. And then it's like, I'm not making any sales. So is it my sales conversation? Is it my not proving to the person the value of this program and how I can help them? Or should I step back? So if all of those things are like seem like they're okay, should I go maybe because of the way things are right now, maybe I actually lower my prices and I don't have to call it a discount. I just change the price. And I
Sure, you
figure
can.
out how to, so what do you have to say about sort of
Right.
paying attention
So
to those things?
first of all, it's your business. You can change your rates whenever you want, right?
Yeah. Right.
But there's a lot of ways to review pricing. So one is to look at, am I going to offer the same exact program or offer and raise my rates just because I think I should be paid more? Or am I going to offer what looks like from the outside observer the same program at the same price, but I'm going to change what I offer, as in I might change, maybe it took me, I'm going to just make up, maybe it took me 30 hours to deliver that program.
Hmm.
But because now I've gotten better at it, it only takes me 20 hours.
Hmm.
So instead of as a feature in describing what I'm doing, you get 30 hours with Markey Read. You simply talk about the results and the outcomes of it, and the amount of time becomes less important to the client. And so when we again that gets into that psychology of trading time for money when we think of, this program gives you X number of hours. Well, really, this program gives you a result. And so that's one thing to do. And then the other, I think, in response to, external economic things, you might look at, how do I create something that is not that big program, but it's an intro. Maybe
Right.
maybe breaks the program up so that it steps in that process. And you
Yep.
don't make one big sale, you make three moderate sales.
Hmm.
And so part of the process, part of the point of that is to simply get people in the door and start to
Right.
create some cash flow, right? So because when
Right.
we're committed to the one big program as our signature, everything, everybody's going to have to work with me in this place. Then it cuts out people. So you might come up with some handouts, some things that people can download that are low cost or free. You can do more online group kinds of things. So there's ways for you to break it up to still impart the wisdom. I've
Right.
been working with this a lot myself this last couple of years, really clearly looking at what is it that I want people to walk away with when they work with me, whether it's in a free handout, a webinar, in one-to-one coaching, or a big giant signature program. There's
Mhm.
fundamental concepts that I want to be imparting. And when I came to understand what those were, everything I do speaks to those at some level, right? At some level, but not but it doesn't do everything. So, a free handout isn't going to give you everything.
Right.
But it
Right.
speaks to the core pieces that I work with people on, is really getting clear about what you're offering, who you're offering it to, how are your pricing structure doing, and what are your systems that are supporting that? How are you really stepping into your leadership? All of those pieces are embedded in everything I do because I can't help myself, right? It's like it's what I talk about.
Right.
But if it's a self-directed handout that you're going to download, then there's going to be limit to it. It'll still be in there if you're aware of the kind of the pillars or the concepts. It'll be there.
Mhm.
And that's the place where I think that it takes time as entrepreneurs to develop that. When people told me, oh, develop all your lead magnets, develop a bunch of freebie stuff, I was like, I don't even know what? What you want me to give away everything? Because that's what I heard. And what I understand now is, yeah, I can give away really useful, really juicy information and resources and tools, but it's not the whole farm,
Right.
right?
Right.
I
Absolutely.
don't
I
have to
used to
give
give away the
everybody.
farm.
Right. I don't have to give my entire intelligence and knowledge and wisdom that I've collected over all these years in a freebie, but
Mhm.
I can embed my basic core tenets, my basic core themes in everything that I do.
Right. Well, and I've been doing that the last few months with my own stuff, and I actually had
Mm,
a in fact, Gail Stevens was there. I had a webinar last week. And I had told people at the beginning that I was going to have an offer at the end, just to, being transparent. And when I gave the offer, it was to get them into a small 5-week group program for
hmm
for a very reasonable, affordable rate. And so I start that next week. And then if people are in that program and they're like, I'm thinking I might want to work with you alone, what does that look like? Then I can explain that to them and I'll say, hey, and what I'll do is I'll credit you what you've already invested in this toward what that would be. And then we can work on the rest of this together. So it is kind of steps right now. And I think
Right.
it's also a good test to do that because, when I think about, like, I had 90 people register for that event. 40 showed up live, and that's actually higher. Usually get 25 to 30%
It's very
live.
good. Yeah.
So that was a really good show up rate. But those people, even though they didn't go into something, those people are still interested in my topic
Right.
and they want
Right.
to learn more. So what's something else I can think of to do to meet the needs for them? So I still gave them value. I gave them takeaways. They can do a lot of that on their own. And some people are perfectly fine with that,
And so,
So
and so for some people, all they needed was a reminder. I have a free webinar also where I talk about kind of the why do people not charge, enough? What's in the way? And I had lots of people who in that saying, "Oh, now I know I'm going to raise my rates." Now they didn't go through my whole, powerful pricing maximizer course where I really helped them understand their pricing strategy and all of that, but they knew enough right away that they need to raise their rates like immediately.
yeah,
And that right there, I'm thrilled. I'm
right.
thrilled when people get that. Just even that's a juicy, juicy bit that in your body, it's time for me to raise my rates.
Well, exactly. And then the other thing is too, I mean, I'm sure you do this when you get your clients too, is you ask them like, well, how do you like to deliver your service? Like how
Hmm
do you prefer group programs? Do you prefer one-to-one? Do you like a little bit of both? I mean, I love one-to-one. I do.
Mm,
um, because so much of what I do is so customized. It's
yeah,
personal branding, it's personal story. So I can do group things that relate to that, but I can go much more narrow and deep when I do the intensive one
right.
to one, right? And that's my jam. And then there's other people who are like, I never want to do one to one again. I love doing one to many. So, I mean, I would imagine you kind of
Yeah.
gauge what people's preferences.
Right. And you always start with your strength. So if
Right.
one-to-one is your real, like that's where you shine. That's your best stuff. Well, then do mostly one-to-one and do some group. But if one to many or one to a few is where you really shine, then do more of that and do fewer one-to-one. So there's no one recipe that fits for everybody. It's
That's
it's
what I was
a
that's what I was trying to
it's
say.
it's really this is even true in networking. People who
Mhm.
freak out about networking, they say, well, then don't go to big groups if you don't like big
Right.
groups. Go meet people individually. And today you can meet with somebody individually anywhere in the world, which,
Yeah, and you
like
can
it's
meet them
amazing,
on Zoom
right?
if you want to and
Right.
have a virtual
I mean,
coffee.
the number of one-to-one conversations I have with people from other parts of the world now is just phenomenal.
Right.
But then when I show up, like if I do some one-to-one conversations with people in the eWomen network, and then I go to the conference, I'm not in a sea of people I don't know. I'm in a sea of people of whom I know several,
Mhm.
and now it's easier for me to meet more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In the beginning when I was, this whole new networking thing was open to me from the national side, not just the, local
Right.
side or regional
Right.
side. It was overwhelming. But then I got very intentional. Like last year, for example, when you mentioned the International E-Women Conference in Dallas, I actually went 2 days early and I had clients and prospective clients who were going. And I set up meetings with them to go out to lunch or whatever, even before the conference started. And I knew exactly who I wanted to talk to. And it wasn't because I was trying to sell them something. I was either doing a client appreciation thing, like taking them to lunch
Yep.
and just having conversation, but it's all about the relationship.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, you've got to find what your groove is. It's the same thing I do when I work with my one-to-one PR clients in my media impact program. One of the very first things we do in the intensive is before we decide what kind of PR opportunities you want in the media, what kind of media do you consume?
Mhm.
Because whatever
Mhm.
they consume, if they love podcasts or they love television or whatever it is, then that's the kind of opportunity they're going to want to get because it's aligned with what they do. If I say to somebody, we're going to try to get you on 10 podcasts, and the last thing they want to do is be on a podcast, I'm not going to try to get them that
Right.
opportunity, you know? So it's kind of similar. So
Yeah. Yeah.
so Gail
I think
says,
that
for those of us who are startups or even in growth, our budget does dictate our decisions and actions. Not that we wouldn't love that coaching and programs. These webinars are great for connection. Okay.
it's true.
Thanks, Gail.
It's
Yeah.
true. And that's the thing is, if I only waited for people to pay me for learning anything from me, then first of all, I would die with all that wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm just like there'll be a time when I just won't be here and I won't have been able to share it with people.
Right.
And I participate in lots of free things. I mean, who doesn't love a free thing, right?
Right.
I show up to a lot of things where I'm interested in what the person has to say or I'm checking them out. And sometimes I buy and sometimes I don't. It really
Right.
depends on what the value is and what my need is at the time and whether it's a really good fit for me.
Well, you have to be discerning, right?
Right.
So one of the things I know about you from your background is, you used to do a lot of, I don't know if you called it career counseling, but you help people and you certainly did the Myers-Briggs type kind of thing.
Right.
So I'm curious in this, now that you've got now that you're bringing in this pricing focus into your business, this is, I don't want to say it's new, but it's another service you've added to your breadth of
Right.
services, right? So I'm curious if when you're working with somebody, especially a startup or somebody who might be 2 or 3 years in, do you work with them on sort of like the foundational components like Myers-Briggs? Like, do you kind of
Absolutely.
go,
Yeah.
okay, so can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think
Yeah.
that's a
So
fascinating aspect that you bring to this.
first of all, the funny thing about the career work is that almost every client who ever come to me, whether it was for professional development or entrepreneurial development, wants to know how much should I be paid. So I've been talking about what people should be paid for 30 years. So in terms of the personality type, I think personality type is really foundational to tapping into what your superpowers are and being able to own that in a way that you can apply it and really and use it in your everyday life. So I use personality type, and and again, it's embedded in everything that I do, whether I'm explicitly talking about type or not. It's embedded in everything because it's part of my
Right.
perspective on life. So I bring it in because for to entrepreneurs especially, somebody might hear our conversation and think, "Oh, I should do all of those things." Well, maybe not. Maybe
Right.
not, because maybe it's actually not a good reflection of you and it doesn't tap into all of your fabulous, wonderful qualities. And the similar we know with the networking piece, if you know that you're better one to one, well, that's a personality type quality that, if you're better one to one, start with one to one and build the one to many.
Mhm.
If you're better one to many, then start there and then go into the depth of one to one. That's a personality piece.
Yeah,
But if
exactly.
you know your personality type, you can also start to design your business more effectively. You can understand that I don't need to master QuickBooks. It's a waste of my time. Now, if I were a bookkeeper and I told you that, then you should be concerned. But that is not my business, right? It is not my business. And so I need to know that I need to be able to read the reports I get. I need to be able to ask good questions. I need to be able to access the information when I need it. I need to be able to record things in a way that my accountant can maintain things for me. But for me to think that I should be an expert in that, at the same time that I'm an expert in all the things that I actually am an expert in, is unfair to me and it's unfair to my clients.
Mhm.
And so when we decide that we need to, like there was a time in our culture when if you had a weakness, you were supposed to work on developing your weakness. And now it's changed quite a bit where people are more willing to say, if I'm a bozo, and this is why I talk about bozo powers. If I'm a freaking bozo in this area, then I need to be supervised. Like I need supervision when I get into this, or I need to have somebody else do it because I am not the best person for this. It's
Mhm.
not a good use of me.
Right.
But I am me, and you, we're very good at working with people to
Mhm.
helping them understand their story and bring it out and bring it together, right? And like all those wonderful, juicy qualities that we bring to our clients. Now, there's other folks who that's not what they're good at, but they probably have a really different business, right?
Mhm. Yep.
Because if you are not great with people, then don't become a business owner that has to do with a lot of coaching and emotional support for people.
Mhm.
Do something else. Maybe you're a statistician and you're really good at researching,
Yeah.
and that's your thing. And you know how to talk to humans because you're a human. But you just you don't like spend all of your time interacting with people.
Well, one of your raving fans here, Paula, says,
Yes.
I can say that learning my personality type from Markey years ago helped me gain confidence about my superpowers. It also taught me to understand why other things I thought I should be doing were not necessary. I can't say enough about how much that helped me be a better business professional.
Yeah. Yeah, and really, Paula's a great example of that. I think that she just let go of a lot of stuff that she thought she felt badly about. Like she felt like she should. It's all those shouldings on ourselves.
I know we should
I
on ourselves.
should be better at this. I should be better at this. The
Yeah,
shoulda, wouldas, and couldas will kill you eventually.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
part of the value of aging and wisdom is to know that I'm just not going to that's never going to be the thing that I learn how to do or master. I can learn it, but don't need to master it because it's not required for me to do the real work that I'm here to be doing.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, this has been great. I want to just sort of wind down. We're not completely done yet. So, one of the things I just wanted to ask you about, Marky, I know we've been focusing on the pricing strategies and things like that, but just briefly talk about what are some of the other ways that you work with your clients. So, I know you work on, we mentioned the Bozo Powers thing, but just kind of walk us through the other two or three things that you do with your clients that you work on.
Sure. So I really want women especially to embrace the quality that they're in charge of their own business. And that whether you call that CEO, whether that you call that leader, whatever you want, whatever title you want to put on that. But when people say to me that they're self-employed, it's such a disempowering term.
Mm,
I really want women to own. You're a business owner. You're a CEO. The
Hmm.
fastest way to becoming a CEO, of course, is to start your own business.
Hmm.
So from that place, we back into, how do you tap into your personality type and really focus on your strengths and build your business around that. In fact, I've done research around kind of what are the kinds of businesses that different personality types start and are successful at. It's not predictive so much, but just like helping people go, oh, that's why I've really been struggling over here. Maybe if I shift over here, it might help me.
Hmm. Right.
And I really love to work with people on their what are they offering, so they're creating the steps, the different kinds of the range of pieces that people can access. Um, in addition to that, it's how do you talk to your audience? What is it that you're really saying? The niching down process is particularly important too, because when we can claim our niche, we're much more able to do clean and clear marketing. You know this, right? Because if
I
I
do.
if I know not just who my people are, but like what my niche is, then it's very easy for me to talk about that all the time and
Mhm.
not feel like I have to tell everybody everything I do. So
Right.
the piece that I work with people on is how do you when you go from expert to thriving CEO. So how do
Mhm.
you cultivate that inner CEO in you and go from a person who's a good expert, an expert who gets paid reasonably well, to being a thriving CEO who's not just making it through the day and the week, but really thriving and prospering in her own business.
Amen.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
very well said. So, so I know you have a freebie for our listeners today, and even those watching on the replay can have access to it too. And my producer Jim will put some links in the chat for everybody. So there's the link on the chat right now. But just tell us a little bit what they're getting in the freebie that you're offering up, and thank you.
Sure, sure. So it's the booklet's called "How to Get Paid What You're Worth: Own Your Value," and it helps you start to embody that. To really look at what are the two pieces in embodying it is understanding the value of the transformation, but also the value of your experience and wisdom and expertise, and how do you bring that into your pricing conversation. And when you understand that, it's a great basis for you to create that powerful building block of your hourly rate and getting into other kinds of pricing strategy pieces. And there's more complexity to it. There's other parts to that series called Elevate Your Pricing and Convey Your Worth. So it's really how do you start to then implement that and bring it into it.
Okay. And so people can connect with you by email.
Yeah.
And also on LinkedIn. I think Jim has the link for your LinkedIn
Hmm.
profile too. And it's Markey Read. It's READ. There's no E on the
Hmm.
end, not like the
Right.
drugstore.
And as far as I know, I'm the only Markey Read on the planet spelled this way. So
Oh, okay.
I,
Well,
I
that's
am
good.
completely
I didn't
unique
know
in
that.
that way. Yeah.
I didn't know that. So, thank you so much for making the time to be with me on Coffee with Kate. And you
Always a
got a mug
pleasure,
out of it
Kate.
too.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Is
And
there
and
any
I just
little gem or just like other little nugget you would like to leave with our listeners today, and for those listening on the replay as well?
yeah, I mean, just remember that you're the only one that has lived your life, and your life is full of rich, rich nuggets and wisdom that you can share with your clients. So while there's all kinds of people out there talking about pricing, all kinds of people out there talking about pricing, all kinds of people talking about how to stand out online, how to promote yourself, right? They haven't had my experience, and they haven't worked with the clients I have. They don't have the tools that I have. They don't have the tools that you have.
Mhm,
And so, yeah, that you can learn about pricing from lots of people, but you won't learn about pricing in a way that I believe is holistic and
mhm.
really in alignment with your business and yourself and your core of who you are, your personality, unless you work with Markey Read.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you again. Please stay on, even though we're gonna end the stream. Please stay on just so that we can chit chat a little bit afterwards.
And I just
Thank
want to say thanks for the people who showed up too. It's really great to see your questions and comments, and it's fun to have fan clubs.
Yeah, well, and there's more people that showed up. They just not everybody always asks a question.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you to all our listeners. You'll be seeing this on the replay. If anybody has any questions on the replay after seeing this, please go into the chat and tag at Markey Read or at Kate Payne, and we will get notified of that. And we can go right back into the chat, even if it's a month from now, and answer your question. But thank you again, Markey.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next month on my next Coffee with Kate.
All right.